Welcome to the Horsemouth Podcast. It's my excuse to meet fascinating people and learn how they approach work, creativity, and problem solving. My guest today is an independent journalist, creative consultant, and freelance writer specializing in culture, Gen Z, and the internet. Her essays have been featured in noted publications like the Indian Express, the Hindu, Vogue, and Vice, and she's also the editor-in-chief of Stumble, a culture vertical of Commune India. A product of Delhi University, she has a first-class BA Honours degree in English Literature and a minor degree in Psychology from Lady Shri Ram College for Women. Earlier this year, a little company called Google flew her out to their San Francisco headquarters to participate in a global leadership summit as their youth advisor via Canvas 8. As if that's not enough range and acclaim, she's presently writing her debut non-fiction book, slated to come out in 2025. This afternoon, however, she's proven that her literary genius doesn't translate to everything. For in a glorious miscalculation of logic, she's agreed to be on my podcast. I intend to pick her brains on her research, storytelling, creativity, and our shared love of Van Gogh. To read her incredible work, please visit riachops.com and follow her on Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. You can also listen to her co-host a podcast called Uncultured by Stumble on Spotify, where she unpacks culture and asks the questions you've been too afraid to ask. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Ria Chopra. Ria, welcome.
Thank you so much, Shubhankar, for that lovely introduction. I'm very excited for our conversation today.
So, Ria, right off the bat, I wanted to start by telling you that in preparation for this interview, I read a lot of your work. Like a through line that I found in a lot of your essays is that much like a observational comic would find the humor in the mundane, you not only find the humor, but also the romance, the complexity, and the brilliance of the mundane. So my first curiosity with you is that what exactly have you inculcated or cultivated that has gotten you so good at pointing out things that are under our noses but we don't seem to get it, but you do? How does that happen? Because I have my conspiracy theory about it,
Okay.
But I'll tell that to you later. First you start.
Okay, I would love to hear what you think also, but I don't think there's any conscious process behind me sitting and thinking, oh, let me observe something now and figure out what to write about. ऐसे consciously नहीं होता है. Most of my ideas come to me because I think, one, I'm a nosy person, which makes for a great journalist. I am deeply interested in other people's business. I'm interested in my own business also.
Eavesdropping.
All of those things. Looking into people's phones on the metro, looking at what two people fighting about in Connaught Place are fighting about, all of those sorts of things. And I think that's, you can call it observation, whatever you want to call it. I am interested in and entertained by other people and by the things I observe in common between them and me also. There is no them and me. I think a lot of the writing that I do is about our generation, a generation that lives online, that is finding itself through pop culture, through a lot of those things. So I think this nosiness and this wanting to figure out the connections and the similarities between all of us, that lends itself well to my writing, because once I figure out some common strand that is happening in all of our lives, then you want to get to the bottom of it. Why are all of us doing this one exact same thing? Or why are all of us behaving in a certain way? And I think I'm an extrovert, so I like finding things that connect me to other people also.
Were you always an extrovert?
Yeah, 100%. I think younger child syndrome and school pushed me into it also. I've always liked other people. I enjoy other people. And
I think you were the head girl in school,
Yeah.
so that must have contributed to a little bit.
the extrovertness. I think, in fact, extrovertness would have probably led to that. Yeah.
All right. But is it safe to say that you were a geek also?
Yeah, I was academically inclined always, and I think I have a habit of wanting to get to the bottom of whatever interests me. So even when I watch a movie and it's really good, I will open the IMDb, I will go to the trivia page of the IMDb, I will see all the actors, and I'll figure out what other movie they were in, what was their first movie. And it turns out sometimes, one actor you didn't even observe in the background is some famous person who was in another one of your favorite works. So I really like getting to the bottom of things that interest me. And I think that happens with everything that I love. That also probably lends itself to the writing that I do, because this decoding or wanting to know everything about everything, that's a trait. It's always been a trait.
So my theory is that it is obviously, so you've described to me what it is that gets you to point these things out, but the source of it, I feel, is genetic. I'll tell you why. Because
Okay.
I have spent a very serendipitous day with your sister in Kolkata.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time traveling in public transport. And there was a very stark moment where she was with her camera in her hand. She was clicking pictures of people's hands a lot. And I just wanted to know like why you're doing that. And I asked her that. And I mean, I'll probably misquote her and I'll probably not be able to tell you the exact reason why. But the जिसको हम हिंदी में कहते हैं ना, सार उसका ये था कि she was trying to figure out the patterns. She saw the visual pattern there, one hand over the other, or a bunch of hands holding the same pole.
Yeah.
And that is somewhere like really that excited her in an artistic way. And she decided to document it visually. And I feel that whatever has happened, both the sisters have the same talent. One person has manifested that visually in the camera, and you have probably done it in literature. Is that fair?
I think that's a good observation. Ek to, like, proud of your observation skills as well. Like, you are also one of us, one can say, if you're finding all of these things out. But I also think a shared trait like this becomes part of the environment that you grow up in. When we were growing up, and my sister and I were pretty close in age, and our family, the rest of us as well, I feel like the kinds of conversations that you have, if that revolves around the observations, you're encouraged to speak up about what you're observing in the world around you, it strengthens your observational muscle as well. When you realize that people are actually interested in the things that you have to say, they are interested in hearing the parallels you are able to draw. कि आज जो ऐसा हुआ, एक साल पहले ऐसा कभी, ये हुआ था. I think it's you building up that muscle that exists inside of you, realizing that this is a valuable skill. In fact, I think observation goes severely underrated as a skill in general in life to have. And maybe that's the environment that we grew up in. I've never consciously thought about this, but now that you point this out, I think it's true. And even my sister and I, the conversations that we are having are about things like this, कि मैंने ये notice किया or something. It becomes second nature for your brain to do those things.
I noticed a lot of whiteboards in your house, even in the living room and in the room that we are right now. I mean, I attributed that to the visual learning that you mentioned. So what is that? Why are there so many whiteboards in your house?
These are not mine actually. These are instituted by my father. Instituted is a formal word. We have a lot of discussions at home about life, about philosophy, and there are some abstract concepts that don't make themselves very clear when you just verbally talk about them. It becomes better when you put them down in a flowchart or in something, basically. So visual learning is something that I prefer, but I feel like it also makes a lot of abstract discussions easier. That's why we had these on every floor of our house.
Also, you're an art lover, which I thought was very interesting, because obviously, again, for an author to take inspiration from the visual medium, how does, say, a painting of guff or whatever, like we can go on into that as well, but how does it inspire your literature?
I don't think it inspires my literature. मुझे अच्छा लगता है देखना, very honestly.
But you said you're a visual learner, so then what does that mean?
I learn things better when I see them happen. In science class, for example, I used to always remember the lab experiments that we did versus the things that were taught to us verbally in class. So I am better at seeing things happen and then figuring out why this is happening versus just reading up about it and trying to imagine how it's working out in my head, which is also why I think a lot of the writing that I do is visually observational. कि मैंने देखा कि ये हो रहा है, मैंने देखा everyone saves their contacts on their phone in a certain way. The one specific inspiration from art that I think I take in my work is that a lot of my writing deals with pop culture, which in and of itself is a form of not just visual art though, like anything and everything such as books, memes, etc. Everything is included in pop culture. So I think I also studied literature, which is also a form of art. So the ways that we academically study these things, they are sometimes similar. Academic theory, literary theory is very similar to the kind of critical film theory that you would study, and those lenses and perspectives overlap in a lot of ways. So a lot of things that I took away from literature classes are things that I apply now to analyze memes, and I don't think my professors ever thought they were teaching someone how to anthropologically look at memes.
But memes in itself are art form.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's a cumulative interest in all kinds of art. Visually, I have favorite artists. I also quiz. So similarly, I delve deep into those artists' lives, like Van Gogh ने certain चीज क्यों paint करी, or like why was Monet painting all of these water lilies, etc., etc. And I'm reading up about their life. You find something interesting that inspires you, quotes by them that inspire you.
So you're saying that your interest in trivia and your interest in art and your literary writing are all overlapping in a Venn diagram.
I think writing is always a dissection of your life, even for a journalist, even for a fiction writer and even for a non-fiction long form writer, whatever you're writing comes from your natural interest because there's a reason why you're writing about a particular topic. And my reason is maybe this, like the art world and what it speaks about the human condition interests me, which is why I write about the things that I write about.
When I read your work, one of the things, like one of the formats that I found is that you have this innate ability to start off with a very personal experience that happened, whether it was in an art gallery that a girl was trying to click a picture or a text that you received in the middle of the night calling you a cat lady or whatever. And it so seamlessly enters into your reflections on life and your reflections on society and your inner opinions. And these opinions are not just like shot in the dark. There's always a cited research or a paper or whatever. And it always culminates also in the initial text or in the initial story. There's a callback right in the conclusion. That is the format that may not apply in every essay, but predominantly there's a format. How did this format come to you? Was it always there in your head that I should do this? And how have you perfected that?
I think there's always a subconscious way that you talk or the way that you write, and that is your first forms of writing. If you're observing them enough, you realize there's a common thread that emerges out of all of them. For example, I noticed even in my academic essays in college, whenever I was dissecting some author's work or like looking at how Dickens personifies the condition of England at the point of time that he was writing in. Even in all of them, I was able to be a little funny. I wanted to, have dry humor, sarcasm, etc. So you realize that about yourself. Okay, I need my writing to be funny. Similarly, I realized early on that I need my writing to have my personal life or my anecdotes in them, because I feel like that makes it very relatable to the reader as well. Even if you don't relate to the exact anecdote I'm describing, you will probably have had something similar happen to you, or what I'm talking about will connect to another incident in your life that you feel is very similar in the way, in the emotion that it evokes out of you, etc. And I feel like that's a good hook to get your reader interested in your writing immediately. They're like, this writer is just like me, or the feeling they're experiencing is just like me. But this conscious development of it happened much later. Early on, it was just me writing as like a stream of consciousness and realizing baad mein kyun all my writing does follow this pattern.
Except the Vogue article.
Yeah, I think that's very philosophical and meditative.
You started with a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think that came at a very specific point in my life where I was wanting to see if I can do this very theoretical sort of writing. Even the language of that Vogue article is not the normal way that I talk. A lot of my writing is actually exactly the way that I talk, which is all of these personal anecdotes, random digressions that are going nowhere but somehow link back to the topic at the end, thankfully. That Vogue article was a personal exercise for myself. The theme emerged once again out of my life, realizing that someone was putting my writing in the bucket of content, which is not something I agreed with, because I feel like content reduces, it's a very flat
commercial
way to refer to. Exactly. And then I was like, why not make this essay a personal exercise in wanting to develop that sort of voice, seeing if I can also do this elegant language, theoretical writing. It was enjoyable as an exercise. I don't think I would write that way all the time, and I don't write that way all the time. But coming back to the initial question, like that format, it's something that I've now realized works very well for me. It's also for essays as a form, it's great to have a callback at the end that ties back to your beginning, because it makes your reader feel that they've read a cohesive full piece. Exactly. They remember the beginning at the end, and hence they remember your full essay or your full article at the end, and that's their takeaway, which I think is a nice, like you've tied a little bow around the whole thing and given it to them. But for anyone who's listening to this, like, I wouldn't say you need to consciously develop a template or a style for yourself. Do your writing as a free-flowing exercise, and once you figure out your voice, you will also start figuring out what are the little pepperings, like what is the salt and pepper of your work, and that can be something you replicate again and again. If you figure out something that's working, do it again. Like that's how we become niche-specific writers and template-specific writers.
And when you're citing so many other articles, and sometimes it's a link to some other article within that same website or whatever, is there an editorial pressure on you to do that, to cite or do your research, or is it something that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, it's something I enjoy doing because once again, when I'm writing about something, I've already read up so many other writings about it. What other people are saying about it is an important part of research whenever you're writing something. The internet, I think, is great in the sense that anything you write can be very metatextual. You can link something out to a video, you can link something out to a tweet. There are many articles where I cite a research statistic in one line and the next line is a tweet or a meme about someone, and somehow always the meme makes more sense than that. Like you will remember the meme, not the number, whatever that I had quoted. So it's a wonderful way for you to link your work to those who have worked in a similar domain before you, and maybe also set a roadmap for those who will come after you. People link my work also, which I think is great. You're sharing viewership, you're sharing readership, and you're also giving credit where credit is due, because if you're borrowing a quote or something from someone, it's only the correct method to link back to their book or to their web page or to their website whatsoever.
Right, of course.
This is actually a problem that I'm having now that I'm writing my book, because I can't link things out. So I have to explain
So
stuff.
you need to have a separate citation column.
I do have, footnotes and notes, all of that is going on. It's new for me, which is one of the things I enjoy about writing also. Like it makes you explore all of these newer things. But there is no editorial pressure to link out, but I think it's correct to link out when you're borrowing
Your
from
conscience does not allow you to not cite.
Yeah,
somebody.
it's also something I've just always observed other people do, and that's just naturally how I felt I should also write. Like now that I think about it, my first essay also has a lot of linking out to other pieces that nobody asked me to do, but everything I read had links to other places, so I was like, maybe डालती हूँ और जगह का links. So I think your creations are often a derivative of your consumption.
Whatever you've consumed.
Yeah, so that just became my method. And it's also standard, like I'd say, even in journalism, if you're quoting something from somewhere,
No, of course.
अगर गलत भी है तो उन्हीं को ही blame जाए ना, आपने तो उनको कर दिया है site.
I think one of the other things that you've really mastered, or at least you've spoken about wanting to master in some way or the other, is slow work. Because I feel like for someone who breathes culture, your actions and your approach to a lot of your work, I mean, I don't want to say it's counterculture, but it is away from the mainstream, which is that, in a world where there are these quick tweets and quick responses and 24/7 online existence, I find you to be slowly and steadily going away from that. And maybe, I mean, I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, but like I feel that a lot of your approach towards your creativity is slow, in depth, doesn't have to be quick. I think a lot of times you have to stop yourself from immediately posting about something that has happened. For someone who's dealing with so many things that are happening in the current, and where the relevancy is key, you are taking your sweet time to have a constructed opinion about it. Is that a fair assumption?
I wouldn't say that's entirely accurate. I think there are some things, especially when I'm writing about a very current trend and not always writing about them. I've started making reels now and doing like online content as well. And,
No content.
Not content. Online short form video.
Yes.
And whenever there's something that I feel needs to be spoken about now, and there is not enough time to go through the editorial process of pitching to a place and telling them, let me write this essay and get published, etc., I do just make a video on it and put it out on my own Instagram or on my own Twitter as a thread, because I feel like if you have a platform and people talk about it in various terminologies, the democratization of information due to the internet, all of those things, I feel like it's very legitimate to put things out on your own platform as well, and then it is your onus to make sure it's accurate, make sure it's well analyzed. You don't have an editor working with you to make sure there's factual accuracy, all of those things. So I do still talk about things that are very current on these mediums. I have a mental benchmark where I categorize some things as essay thoughts and some things as tweet thoughts. And I used to do this because I was very active on Twitter till last year, I'd say. Since then, I've slowly been tapering.
Essay thoughts and what else?
Essay thoughts and tweet thoughts.
Tweet thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there is an idea that I can put in a tweet, and I've thought about it for an hour, a couple of hours, and there are no more follow-up thoughts I would have on it, I tweet it out. If there is an idea that I have that is getting encapsulated in more than 3 tweets, that is an essay thought. And that is something I should pitch to an editor, because there is something there. And to digress a little bit, I sometimes see a lot of other people also tweet out these one-liners that then become like the base argument for an essay that I'm writing. So I feel a lot of people are not spending enough time thinking about their thoughts before putting them out, because if there's more to add, why not do it in a longer form? All I've done for myself is to now have that benchmark internally. I do still tweet out and put stuff on my Instagram post or Instagram story also if it's that ephemeral a thought to have. Because I feel agar aur kuch nahi hai, then why wait for someone for that thought to be relevant in a larger context and only then put it up?
For someone who has a lot of opinions and has, takes on a lot of things, when do you know that opinion is completely baked and ready to be put out? Like, meaning you can now, like you said that, there must be some internal gatekeeping that must be happening that, okay, I need to research more. Even if that research is just a Google search, even if it is not like going to a library, but say you have a time span of 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know how, but like, when do you know that, okay, this is good enough for Ria Chopra to put it out?
I think it comes back to that extroversion thing also, because anything that you see online that I've put out on Twitter or Instagram or even in a piece of writing, it is a conversation I've had on 3 different group chats already.
Achha.
एंड अगर मुझे थॉट आया वो सबसे पहले ग्रुप चैट में जाता है या मेरी सिस्टर को मैसेज में जाता है या किसी और को जाता है एंड देन यू हियर फ्रॉम देम यू इन दैट मीन टाइम यू आर ऑल्सो रनिंग अ गूगल सर्च मे बी लुकिंग थ्रू ट्विटर इफ इट्स समथिंग करेंट यू आर रीडिंग अदर ओपिनियंस आई थिंक एट सम पॉइंट इट्स एन इंटरनल स्विच ऑफ रियलाइजिंग दैट आई हैव डन द थिंकिंग दैट आई वांटेड टू डू एंड देन यू एक्सेप्ट द फीडबैक दैट यू गेट ऑल्सो plenty of times I put out opinions and have someone comment something much better that ये तो आपने सोचा ही नहीं and at that point of time you're like हाँ मैंने मतलब नहीं सोचा and you then like you should retweet their thoughts also because that is a worthy addition
so
to what
you're not really concerned with being correct with your opinion all the time. It's okay if you're proven wrong in that discourse.
I have been proven wrong multiple times. Like it is, I think it's part of, I don't want to use this word personal brand, but it's part of the way that I engage online that मुझे भी ऐसे नहीं है कुछ बहुत ज़्यादा ज्ञान है about a lot of things. I am also a 25-year-old woman who has access to the resources that I have access to and not have access to a lot of information as well, and I am learning things as I grow through life as well. So many times I put out things that are misinformed or even incorrect. I think a couple of times I put out factually, opinions that weren't backed factually. Sometimes there are things or arguments that you haven't considered a certain way. So you accept that not knowing things is not a bad quality. In fact, being able to admit कि मैं गलत हूँ या मुझे कुछ नहीं आता है is the only way you continue learning in life. So I am quite happy to be schooled online by people who know much better than me because how else would I learn?
And in the group chats and to your sister that you're doing your little initial feedback session with, are you afraid that the group chat may turn into an echo chamber and not someone that they'll disagree with you?
I think there's a reason why you always have like 3-4 proofreaders or 3-4 group chats or opinion checkpoints, because the idea is these represent fairly a large section of the population who may or may not be ideologically part of your echo chamber. So that is there. Other than that, I think it's you consciously trying to make sure at least that your opinion is not, what is the right word, like echo chamberized or just emerging out of the bubble that you live in. Uske beyond aap bhi kya hi kar sakte ho? You are also a product of your circumstance. It's when you publicly put it out, I think that's when you realize and that's when you learn.
The true check happens.
Exactly. Right. Because then it's up for public consumption. And I do get, people commenting en masse sometimes on some of my stuff that this is incorrect or this is not put in the right way it should be put in. That's when you realize कि हाँ actually मैंने भी जिससे सबसे feedback लिया, they were all in the same community or in the same group as me in a certain domain, which is why my opinion also came out from a very unilateral perspective. Right. That's how you learn. Like I'm quite comfortable with being told that I'm wrong.
Now I think we should come to your process.
Okay.
And I've broken it down into pieces. I have borrowed words from some of the things that you've mentioned in the past.
Excited to see.
So let's talk about essay ideation first.
Okay.
Is that a fair point to start your process from? How does that happen?
So there is never any conscious sitting down and being like, oh, ab mujhe essay likhna hai, let me come up with an idea. That is not how an idea works, which is why ideation is probably the wrong word even to talk about it. एक ऐसे strike of inspiration होता है, कहीं से भी हो जाता है. Sometimes it is, I watch someone do something that happens to be something I was also doing a few days back. And I'm like, अगर ये चीज़ हम सब करते हैं, maybe there is something deeper there, which is where a lot of my observational ideas come from. There have been points in time where I have tweeted something out just being like, oh, I feel this way, and then suddenly 5,000 people are liking it. So you're like, oh, this is also a shared cultural thing probably that everyone is feeling a certain ways about. And that can be your starting a point of realizing this thought of mine is actually an idea. I think that's where you start drawing that distinction between a thought, an idea, and then the pitch. The pitch is what I normally send to editors, telling them कि मुझे publish करने दो ये ऐसे पूरा लिख के. You're watching a movie, you're having a conversation with your mom, with your father, with your sister, and something comes up that you're like, this makes for a good idea. This is a essay thought, not a tweet thought, and maybe not a real thought also. Like this.
Now you're very good at identifying the difference.
हाँ, क्योंकि I know how deeply I can think about one thing. अगर मैंने एक चीज के बारे में सोच लिया, एक दिन हो गया, और अब मुझे और कुछ नया आर्ग्यूमेंट आ ही नहीं रहा है, it is just that one liner thing, then tweet. Yeah.
Well, the complexity of the idea decides the medium.
Exactly. Which is, I think, how it should be also.
Of
like
course.
That's if you're only getting some 240 characters or 90 seconds to talk about something online, but it is a far more nuanced topic, then you should not be. It would be irresponsible to talk about it in those
without
short
context.
Exactly. And I'm as someone who likes to tell stories, give a lot of context, give a lot of digressions, etc. I try to make every thought of mine an essay thought. So it's actually a sign of defeat कि यार इसमें और कुछ है ही नहीं. It is time to put it out online and that's it. Not to say that thought is also not valuable. Oftentimes it is talking about something very topical that I feel like wouldn't have a lasting impression online. It will become a dated idea. No one will read it 1 year down the line. So most of my writing is a little evergreen that way. So I think all of this, the essay writing, because it's stuff that you want to be there for like years and years and it will still be relevant.
Right.
Tweets तो फिर दब जाएंगे algorithm में आपके feed में. This all happens in the ideation phase because these are things tests you put your ideas through to see which medium is the right medium to put them out. Then I talk to people, I put them on the group chat, I wait for people to get back to me. I have 3, 4, 5 people who I'm very comfortable with talking about half-baked ideas because I know they'll give me perspectives and they'll give me things that I haven't thought of. Like there are people I talk to in this ideation phase जो उस तरीके से सोचते हैं जिसमें मैं सोच ही नहीं सकती because their life experience has been so different from mine.
The background, their
exactly.
financial, whatever it is.
All of it. Education, background, where they've lived, the kind of social class they come from, all of those things. So I think these are all things that happen in the ideation phase and often I emerge from that with either a pitch, which is what you send to an editor, which is something like, I'm a 25-year-old girl, I had this thought the other day and I feel like we can look at it from these 2-3 different argumentative perspectives and I want to write a 1500-word essay that I hope you will let me publish in your newspaper. And that's how it goes.
Also, I mean, at your level, you must be getting approached by a lot of publications also too.
It started happening more recently and it's normally editors that you've already worked with in the past because they know कि ठीक है इसको Gen Z के बारे में लिखना अच्छा लगता है. So normally you don't get the whole idea from them. You get something like, oh, Diwali is coming. Do you have something that fits in that time frame? Then at all points of time ऐसा नहीं है कि आपके पास एक ही idea होता है. There are 2-3 thoughts that have been juggling in your head. If any of them fits into the Diwali context, you're like, okay, let me.
Do you have like 4-5 ideas up your sleeve at any given point of time, or do you get empty?
Yeah, I mean, I have those 4-5 ideas because they're still in that. Is this a tweet thought or is this a large thought? So that's there. And they're in, how shall we say, they're in purgatory. I'm waiting for the outside
cold
world.
Storage one.
They're in cold storage and I'm waiting for some inspiration, more information, more input from the outside world that will help me think about them a little differently. अगर मैं differently नहीं सोच रही, they will be on my Twitter or on my Instagram in a couple of days. अगर कुछ मुझे नया आ गया,
if they're rotting, you feel like the cold storage
तो फिर मैं निकाल दूँ.
Yeah. Right. Makes sense. Okay, so that's where the essay ideation comes from. Next, we go to inspiration. So once, say, you've decided, you've chosen a topic, mostly around the internet, Gen Z, and their Gen Z's experience on the internet, and back and forth. Then what are the inspirations that you're looking at? Are you going to libraries and picking out books?
I think it's normally stuff that you've already read because when you're writing an essay, and I'm talking about this in very logistical terms, from the time that you pitch something to the time it gets published, especially if you're writing on the internet, your timelines aren't that long कि आप research करने में बहुत time लगाओ. You get a week, 10 days max. If you're writing about something topical, you get 2 to 3 days. You don't have the time to go to a library or to physically do something about it. Thankfully, we have this wonderful thing called the internet and like Google search. So you can still make sure that you have enough information that supports the arguments that you're making. I think talking with other people is what inspires me the most, because other than all the facts and other than all the research, most of my writing is based around perspectives and anecdotal argumentation, which only comes from talking to people, which is once again like the same 4-5 people I've talked to before. I will probably have another round of conversation with them. कि यार मुझे ये एक और follow-up thought आया. How do you see this? Once again, my sister, my parents, all of these people, I'm in touch with a couple of my professors from college also, who are then like 50-year-olds with PhDs and multiple degrees who are telling you, oh, I feel this is a certain way. I think that helps. This is maybe also an extrovert characteristic. Like talking to other people helps you process your thoughts. Sometimes you read something someone else has written about the same topic and you realize that there's a thread that you hadn't considered before. So I'd say the work of a lot of other people and the thoughts of a lot of other people do inspire me. And then the writing is the work that you do. So
like if you're doing a piece on coffee with Karan, you will be reading Karan Johar's book.
I did actually. This is one piece that for which I actually read his book. I've heard you research like a lot. I know you have researched a lot because some of the phrases that you're using is stuff that I have written online. I can tell. For some pieces, that is necessary. I think when you're writing about a person, you need to make sure that you've done your research on them to avoid any kind of easily disprovable assumptions that you could have made, proving your own lack of expertise or your own inability to research properly. That is definitely there. You should cover your bases, but you should also be, if you're writing opinionated work, I've done a lot of op-eds far more recently, you should be researching about your thoughts also. कि मुझे भी ये जो thought आ रहा है, ये कहाँ से आ रहा है? Is this because I have some deeply rooted bias held within me?
Or my privilege,
my upbringing, all of those things, my bubble, my echo chamber, all of those things. Which is why I think at the end of the day, writing is a self-revelatory process also. Like you're learning so much more about yourself while you're writing, because things come out in your words and you're like, I didn't know I felt a certain way. And when you also read, you become very good at spotting logical inconsistencies between other writers. For example, I read a lot of non-fiction. So अगर एक ही ऐसे में एक टाइम पे एक बंदे ने एक argument किया है, and suddenly later there's an argument that can't run simultaneous to that argument.
The previous thought.
Yeah, you read enough non-fiction or enough like books of any kind, you start spotting these things. It gets worse because you start spotting them in your own writing also. You're like, मेरे में भी तो यही factual inaccuracies या logical fallacies चल रहे हैं. So I think all of that, and this is a digression unrelated to inspiration in any way, but at the end of the day, the things that you learn about yourself, I feel, are the gift that your writing pays back to you far more than financial return, far more than audienceship. Learning who you are as a person is, at least for me, the end goal of my writing. Like it helps me figure myself out.
So in wanting to understand how the generation is existing on the internet and how they're living in today's world, you're also understanding how you are living.
Because मैं भी तो generation ही हूँ.
Right.
I think a lot of my writing also comes from having always seen myself as a very average representation of this generation. Like I write specifically about, say, Gen Z urban Indians. I am 25. I have lived in Delhi, regular like metropolitan city. I have access to the same things as everyone else. I become a mold for what this generation could possibly look like. So the same forces that apply to other people are also applying to me. The same things I'm pointing out about, oh, generation mein ye ho raha hai, are also applying to me. I am susceptible to the same larger forces, narratives as everyone else. Political propaganda, cultural propaganda, all of those things. So it's
again, also I feel that if I were to take an average of your generation, you feel that you will be like the score that will come out. But I feel that you are actually, having read your work now, I have realized that I was so wrong about my perception of whatever your generation was and whatever they were. Because I'm a millennial, I'm nearing 30 now. So for me, there was this, I think, which is जो seniors का junior की तरफ होता है.
ये सिर्फ avocado toast खाते हैं. That's why I started
work
writing.
ethic कुछ नहीं है, this that. So
when I started deciding to write specifically about these topics, most writing about Gen Z was being done by older millennials or people far above that, which is where a lot of the writing about us was like आजकल के लोग, even New York Times writing in a very older generation of today is like XYZ, or you have the Atlantic writing about, oh, they're all spending their money on a certain thing. I feel like there's a lack of empathy when you're both literally and metaphorically looking down on a
Gazing
group of
down
people.
on,
Exactly. It's that outside perspective. हाँ तो मेरा तो काफी clear था. Like I want to write about people my age because someone has to do it with some empathy. यार हम भी we are living at one of the most tumultuous times in history. We are living at this time people are calling the perma crisis. Because permanently there's a crisis, COVID होता है, climate change होता है, war हो जाता है, multiple political insurgencies हो रहे हैं, genocide हो रहा है, क्या क्या हो रहा है, and we are expected to do like 9 to 5s within all of this. To not have empathy when you write about this generation, I feel misses out a lot of the perspectives you could have had, which is what pushed me to write the things that I write in the first place.
Did you feel that you have a responsibility towards your generation?
वो तो बहुत benevolent sound कर रहा है ऐसे it was spite and anger, like why are you writing about me this way?
It was more inside.
हाँ मेरे बारे में भी तो वैसे ही दिख रहे हैं यार. And I was like, you are wrong, like all you old journalists who are writing about us this certain way, like this is incorrect.
So do you, like whatever you write, I mean I don't want to sound like I'm condescending in any way, but of all the things that you represent, again, I mean I keep going back to this word counterculture, but I know it's not, but because you are an example, but do you sometimes ever feel that you're an exception?
In what?
Into your generation, that the generation is, again, this may sound condescending, but it's not. Honestly, it's not. I mean, I'm just trying to tell you that people like you or people who are, getting whatever, like they're putting their voices out for the betterment of the society. Like you yourself as a person are an exception to your generation.
No, I think
you're confident in your generation.
I think in terms of feelings, in terms of thoughts, the discussions I have with a lot of other people my age are reflective in my writing because I share the same opinions as a lot of other people. The only thing different that I'm doing is that I'm putting them out there.
Okay.
And that is why it may seem like, oh, I'm more opinionated than other people or I have more strongly held beliefs than other people. But all that has happened is I have by chance happened to get multiple platforms that allow me to put my voice out there. Right. Due to that, I think there's been a butterfly effect, you can call it that senior journalists will take me more seriously now because I come with more published work than a lot of other people. I will hence get maybe more platforms. They will be willing to include me in a panel discussion or something like that, which can make me look like an exception, but I think my opinions are not exceptional. They're just, I get the time and the space to think and write and put them out, and it can seem that, oh, I'm giving voice to like some thoughts that I have.
Because you are a certified youth leader.
Well, that is, I think, a very broad term. There are actual politicians, actual people leading communities in many different parts.
But if Google says you are, then you must be.
Youth advisor. I think it's about taking the time to think about your life. A lot of other people don't have the privilege to pause. अब उनको काम करना है, उनको jobs करने हैं, they're
उनको introspection का time
नहीं है. And some people are not bent that way. Like you don't want to introspect sometimes. You don't, as a personality, you don't have the capacity to introspect. If I have those tools, I might as well use them and come up with something that I feel is worth putting out and that people could resonate with.
So now let's talk about writer's block. When you open Word and that cursor is just, blinking at you and staring at you, how do you start with the first word? I
think there's also a misconception that people have that once you write enough, like you're an experienced writer or you're a full-time professional, कि आपको writer's block नहीं होएगा, which I think is a lie. At any point of time in your career or at any point of time in your creative prowess, there will be points where you just can't put that first word out. Whenever I get that feeling, you're like, यार कुछ समझ ही नहीं आ रहा कहाँ पे शुरू करें या कैसे करें, और I have these abstract thoughts in my head that seem really good, but I just can't find the right words to put them out on paper. I think the first thing to do is figure out why it's happening. Sometimes you're just tired. You've written 3 essays back to back. This is your 4th. Your brain is also giving up. अब कितना ही आप creatively लिखवा लोगे अपने आप से.
Also, you must be having sleepless nights.
All of those things. Yeah. I have this thing where my deadline sometimes governs when I start.
Procrastination.
So, I know the amount of time it will take me. So if I have a week to write a 1200 word essay, but I know I can write 1200 words ka good essay in like a day, I will spend the first 6 days doing nothing or like just mentally ruminating about what I want to write. And then the final days when I write, and then maybe I will have to pull an all-nighter, but I know it's because of me. Like I accounted for it. So then there's no one else to blame.
Do you write better at night?
Not really. I write better at any point of time when I have hours that I am not disturbed. वो कभी-कभी दिन में भी हो जाता है. I just can't have other people around me. Like I can't have my parents talk about something very interesting like family gossip in the other room and मैं इस कमरे में बैठ के अब book लिखूं अपनी. No, like I want to be part of those discussions. So I just need peace and quiet. often that happens at night. If you're home alone, if you're in a train, on a flight, it can happen at any point of time.
But not in a cafe.
Not in a cafe, because cafes are very, very happening places.
There's a lot of stimulation happening.
A lot of things. And as I said, like a discussion that we had off mic is that I also can't listen to audio only podcasts, because when I'm looking at something else and hearing something entirely different, मेरा sensory ऐसे overstimulation हो जाता है कि अब मैं जो देख रही हूँ उस पर भी ध्यान दूँ, जो सुन रही हूँ उस पर भी ध्यान दूँ. If I'm walking also alongside, that's a whole different thing. Now I have to pay attention to where I'm going also. Same in cafes. If I'm hearing something else, but I'm trying to also write something else, and I'm looking at someone else doing something very funny in the cafe corner, I can't do that, like one thought at a time.
Do you feel that your brain digests overload of information easily?
In some forms, yes. I think we get far too much information on the internet, and you need to be very quick with your brain to figure out what is relevant to you, what isn't. When I'm writing something particularly, I feel like, you know, you see a tweet or something that could potentially fit into your work, you have a split second to be like, oh, do I scroll past or do I spend more time reading the comments on this and figuring out if it's worth it? So I think utna mere mein hai, like I can figure out if something is relevant to me or not. Digests is a different thing. I don't think anyone is capable of digesting. There has to be a limit on human capacity also. So I think wo to hai hi. There is one part of it that can be juggling many pieces of information. Another part of it will be a jack of all trades, and you're not able to dive deeper into any of those pieces of information because you're so busy trying to just juggle them. So I would much rather concentrate on one or two things. वो होता है कितना नहीं होता, that is I think a discussion much longer than very case by case basis का.
When you were in school, in your notebooks, there used to be a lot of like doodling
100%,
a lot of notes, sticky notes.
I zone out very quickly, like that's the thing. So if a teacher is talking about something, I can figure out quickly that this is not interesting to me, and then I will just tune out. And I will look at something. So the doodling
is not your way to concentrate. It's actually your distraction.
Other distraction. When I'm actually concentrating, then I'm, you know, phone away, pen down, all of that, and actually just paying attention to what is going on.
Because, you know, you put out a story where there were a lot of like, I think it was a reel. I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with it was a reel. And you were talking into
and there's a lot of text boxes on top of it. Because sometimes you make something, especially in short form content, and you realize 90 seconds were not enough to talk about everything that you wanted to talk about. Or in the time span jab maine record kiya versus me when I'm going to post it, sometimes it takes an hour to edit and write a caption, all of that. You think of something else. अब मैं पूरी रील तो फिर से बना नहीं सकती. 90 seconds हो गए तो मैं add भी नहीं कर सकती. So now I want to add a piece of information that I think is also relevant. So you just like slap a little text box on top of it. I used to write a lot in my books in college as well, because we used to study full length novels, plays, poetry. And your professor sometimes says something that is so cool, you're like, this needs to be in my book so that every time I come back to this work, I want to have this same thought again and again कि वो उन्होंने मुझे ये बताया था, which put things in a whole new light for me. So I always write like a lot of things.
You're writing in the margins.
Pencil, whatever. So I have a lot of notes.
You're giving a lot of trivia also.
Yeah, and sometimes I just have like underlining and hearts and like, wow, what a line. If you open my college books, like we can look at them later also, it's like, lol, if something funny happens. So I'm giving running commentary in my reading as well. I think I used to do it a lot while studying. I don't do it as much now. Now I just underline or put like one sticky note here or there. But it's definitely part of the way that I learn or the way that I study.
You engage with that text.
Yeah. I think this actually, once again, to go into a digression, but I spent 3 years studying literature in college. That's you, a very learned professor, and 40 other people in a class talking about the same thing in depth. So 40 perspectives, 42 perspectives, everyone coming with all these different life experiences, discussing the same thing in a myriad of ways. Once I graduated, I realized I can't read books the same way again. Like, reading is now not a solitary exercise for me. The same thing has happened with the way I interact, I think, with pop culture on the internet. Because pehle, you watch a movie, you have some thoughts, you keep them to yourself, and you're done. Now that I've realized I can put my thoughts out and have people respond to me and give me something alternative that I've not thought of, you hence want to put forward the most authentic representation of yourself, so the feedback you get is also valuable to you. तो अगर मैं अपना opinion genuinely put out करूंगी, तभी मुझे उसी पे genuine feedback मिलेगा. Which is where all of these addendums and all of that come in. I want people to know exactly what I'm thinking and over-explain myself so that I get very targeted, replies, comments, feedback. Sometimes you put a piece of trivia, someone will give you a follow-up piece of trivia. India back. So ये मुझे अच्छा लगता है, and that can only happen, I think, when you put the most 100% all around representation of yourself.
Like when you're putting a prompt in ChatGPT, you
Yeah.
want it to be as fleshed out as
ताकि
possible.
जो वापस है वो भी बिल्कुल
वो भी
ठीक है.
specific
हाँ,
है.
हाँ.
Right, makes sense.
It's that. We can come back to writer's block. I realized we never finished that. We can tie up that loose end also. तो होते हैं मुझे यार बहुत ज़्यादा. I can force myself to write now. That is one thing. I can power through writer's blocks. Even if I'm like, अब कल deadline है, मुझे आज writer's block है. That is not an option. I will
You need to pull
be
up
black.
yourself.
Yeah. Which
is it that sorry to interrupt you, but is it that you start writing garbage?
No.
That doesn't happen.
No, that I don't do. I am like
you know that exercise where writers will start writing whatever the
I think it's called faucet exercise, that you turn on your tap, you let out all the ganda pani first, and what will come out. Yeah, I've heard Ed Sheeran does that quite frequently when he's writing music. But for me, I know I can come up with a half decent piece at any point of time, and even all the time I was not writing, I was thinking about it. So अगर language उतनी अच्छी ना हुई, my writing is not up to par as my rest of my really good writing, at least my thoughts will be put out there on paper. It is good that I very often work with editors because I'm not self-publishing, so they also help you shape up your argumentation in a better form. So they can embellish it a bit, they can edit the nonsense that you've put in somewhere here or there. That is good because you get that additional round of feedback as well. And powering through it is something that I think you have to do once you learn writing enough through experience. You can figure out your own patterns also. You know, if I force myself to write, तो मैं कर लूंगी. If I pretend, if I'm having like a bout of imposter syndrome, I can just pretend कि मुझे नहीं हो रहा है and मैं लिख दूंगी. You know, you can gaslight yourself into thinking कि you can write this thing right now. You have to figure out what makes you click. You have to figure out the delusional ways you can give yourself confidence to get through imposter syndrome, writer's block, all of those things. I will also say that I can anticipate sometimes जब writer's block आने वाला होता है, you're getting irritable, you're getting tired in like the other parts of your life.
Like
you know it's gonna reflect in your writing as well.
Have you done an experiment where you've actually like written something way before the deadline?
I used to do that in the beginning when I was like a goody two shoes.
And do you think that writing was not as great as the writing that
I think then also the rest of the time that you have, you spend time tinkering it, trying to make it better.
Overthinking it?
Like work expands to fill the time that you have for it. And जितना जल्दी करो फिर बाकी टाइम भी आप ओवर एनालाइज ही करोगे. Might as well do it in a decent way. I'm not saying do it at the last minute every time. It's not good to pull those all-nighters all the time. But do it as and when. And when you have writer's block, you can do other things. You can invoice all the stuff that you've already written till now. You can plan ahead for something. Look for inspiration on like a Twitter or something. So those are other tasks you can fill your time with while your creative energy re-energizes itself. And then you write. But that requires a good amount of time management and a good learning of yourself also. कि मेरा ये pattern है.
Right.
कि at this, after I've written 3 things, I need a break for a week or something like that. So you have to figure that out. And this is why I don't think blanket rules of writing work. Like a lot of people are like, oh, write 500 words a day or write in the mornings, not in the evenings. अब ये सब नहीं होता. Everyone has their own way
Comfort.
of exactly. So you figure out what kind of writer you are and work with it.
Okay. So now that you've written your piece, you've escaped the writer's block and the first draft is ready.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's encapsulate the journey between the first draft and the final draft.
Yeah.
Okay, which is the editing process or the editorial feedback that
Yeah.
happens. My first curiosity is, are you lenient with your editing or extremely brutal?
So I prefer to not edit my own writing myself first. Once again, this is the privilege of having
An
editor
editor.
whose job is to edit your work. So when I write my first draft, which is normally the day before something is set to go out, writing matlab nahi, like it is completed the day before. I spend a few days writing, tinkering with arguments, all of that. I have 3 proofreaders that I send it out to specifically, who are also people I've had discussions with in the past. One of them is my sister. I feel my sister is very good at calling me out. We are at a comfort level where she will say, I know you're capable of writing better than this. Remember that other argument we talked about. Why have you not put that in the work? So
she's vested in your
And I know she will give me time and honest feedback. And she's also someone I respect as both a writer and a thinker. So both her opinions and her view about my writing is something that I genuinely care about. The second person that I send it to is my partner. He works in tech policy. And he thinks in a very different way. He's also extremely offline, which is very different from the kinds of opinions that I see. So I feel like he has a way of slower thinking, deeper thinking. And the things that he sometimes comes up with are not things that my chronically online brain could have thought of. Like एक चीज होती है वो कुछ आपको कह रहा है जो आपने अभी तक सोचा नहीं है, एक है वो आपको कह रहा है जो आप सोच ही नहीं सकते हो. That is the kind of feedback that comes from him. From my sister, it's things that I could have thought of because we share a lot of similar thoughts, but I've just not put it in.
She knows your potential.
Exactly.
And he knows more, right?
Yeah. And the third person is a friend of mine. We quiz a lot together. He is just someone who's extremely knowledgeable about a lot of pop culture, general culture. He's also online a lot. He went to IT. His name is Swapnil. I hope he will listen to this because I really value him as a smart, intelligent, wise person. He went to IT, so he has that analytical thinking. He's also deeply interested in pop culture, music, memes, all those things. He's chronically online, far more online than like my sister and Sal like combined.
Combination, by the way, of IIT and pop culture.
Yeah, and I think that's what he was letting out through quizzing, like the fact that he enjoys these other things that have no place in his degree. Like, where does that knowledge go? So to test it in trivia contests is, I think, that's what we bonded over in the beginning as well. He gives me a lot of genuine factual input as well as a third reader who reads a lot. तो मैंने और writing उन्होंने पढ़ी हुई है. So he gives me feedback basis that, you know, this is the kind of thing I've read recently, like you've not mentioned this, I think you could also add this. So it's a very interesting not interesting but also holistic 3-reader first draft round of feedback that I get. Then I do the edits myself. उनसे जो input आया, I will make that edit, then I will send it off to my editor.
Okay, so you're editing now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, okay. So
I wrote a first draft that I thought was good. I sent it to 3 people. I realized it's not that good. There's plenty of feedback I've got from all of them. I will incorporate that feedback because these 3 people I take seriously. Beyond that, I feel you can overkill also. मैं 10 लोगों को भेज दूँ अपना first draft. I get all of that feedback. That is maybe just far too much for me to do as well. Once these 3 people have told me what they wanted to tell me.
So when these 3 people give you their input, does that input become a gospel truth that you need to abide by?
No.
So you take your stand also. Okay.
Sometimes I'm like, no, you're wrong. Like, that is not an opinion I share. And I will not do that. You think I could phrase something better, but I am very happy with the phrasing that I have now, so I am okay with it. But these are, like, I will at least take their feedback seriously.
You'll consider it.
Yeah. Then it goes to my editor, whoever I'm working with at that point of time. Now I mostly work with people I've worked with before, so we understand each other's writing styles. Sometimes when I'm writing for a newer publication, you don't know how that person functions. So you figure that out, they seem to be cutting all my excessively long sentences into shorter sentences. That's not what my voice is. I feel like if you read any of my essays, I have extremely long run down. They're called a certain kind of sentences. Basically, comma डाल के आप पूरा एक ही paragraph को एक ही sentence बना देते हो. That's also how I talk, without pauses, without full stops. Each thought is leading to the other thought, but the ending is somewhere far different from where you started. I need to preserve that voice because that is also what makes me as a writer. So I'm now at a point in my career where I can push back. I'm like, dekho, some of your edits we will take into account if it's majorly changing my voice. If you're cutting out all the funny parts, we can't do that. Like, we have to. I have a habit of talking directly to the reader at multiple points of time in my writing, which is not considered that good for news pieces, but I feel is very much a part of my voice for culture pieces. I ask the reader, you think you can do this, but blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, something like that. A lot of editors don't like it and they will cut it out. But I'm like, this is who I am as a writer.
Is that like a highbrow thing that we don't talk, we don't break the fourth wall, or is it?
I think it's just rules that everyone has for themselves. Every place also has their own design language, their own linguistic terminology that they want to follow. Sometimes it is part of their style guide. Like, we don't write in first person. Ab fir main kya karu, you know? Like, so you have to reach a good point of consensus where the final essay is something that matches the vibe of the publication that you're writing for, but is also you. So it is Ria writing for Vice.com. It is not just yet another Ria Chop's essay. It is also not yet another Vice.com essay. It's a synthesis of both of these things. So ideally, you working with a good editor can achieve that. takes a few days of editing, few rounds of editing. But
so let's say that the editor is extremely brutal with your essay.
Yeah.
Then what is your feedback to them? Or do you just accept it?
No, I think I can push back a little bit now because I also feel that I know my writing enough to know when I've done a good job, and I read enough to know on average whether what I've done is a good job or not. It depends on the reasoning why editors are also cutting your work. Sometimes if your deadline and your word limit was 1,000 words and you've sent in 1,500 words, their goal now is to cut 500 words from anywhere. That can be your favorite sentence. That can be something you thought was incredible. In cases like that, I either try to find a workaround. I tell them, you still pay me for 1,000 words even though I've written 1,500. Let's just publish it in a longer form because I like it. Most editors will acquiesce to whatever, like if it's a financial or
so
like
the
a
word limit is a payment thing, not a format thing that okay.
In print, it's a format thing.
Exactly.
Because newspapers have a certain size. I don't write very often for print. So if, you're going 300, 400 words here or there, they will not have a problem, especially for online magazines. I know some places have a hard limit. They're like, no one reads beyond 1,500 words, so we can't go there.
Even if it's digital.
Yeah, because they have done their research. They know reader attention spans don't go beyond that.
I think they calculate the minutes, that it's a 3-minute read, 5-minute read.
That has started happening also these days. So, but if it's just that, like we asked you for 1,000 words, so we're paying you for 1,000 words and you've sent 1,500, then you say, I like the 1,500, you still pay me for 1,000 words because end of the day, it's me who's caused this problem, right? I'm the one who stretched that. If they're being arbitrary, then I think you need to push back. If you think your essay is getting worse and not better, that is the point you put a hard stop to it and you're like, listen, can we have a call? Then you try to explain that this is why I've written things a certain way. If they're trying to make your essay too serious, but I am writing about Gen Z pop culture, अब मैं क्यों लिखूं serious? मुझे अच्छे से conversation ही लिखना है. People interested in memes are going to read this. It should be as entertaining as a meme also. So you, I think, have those discussions, which is why you find some editors you want to work with repeatedly because they take that into account. Some people don't, and then you're like, okay, I will not write for this publication again.
Right. So say that an editor has said that due to the budget, we want you to cut down 1,500 words to 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And we'll do it because it may include your favorite line, but we'll cut it out. If say I were to send it back to you and say cut out 500 words, will you happily be able to do that?
It's a problem because if I've sent those 1,500 words, it means I think they're all necessary for this story. But I would appreciate them sending it back to me instead of doing the cutting themselves. I would try to make it work. I'd probably come down to like 1,200 and be like, okay, na tera, na mera. Like, let's go with.
So you really want to protect those 500?
Yeah, I'm very attached.
You're not brutal with yourself.
No. I am very attached.
I think that goes back to your digressions and rabbit holes and context. And
I think that is part of who I am as a writer. Like, it's necessary for those things to be there.
Now come in the reviews or the opinions and the feedback and all of that. I mean, I know that you are not a person who believes in metrics and doesn't believe in looking at your stats and whatever. Although you're pretty successful in that regard as well.
I hope so.
But so then, what is your measurement of quality writing?
DMs.
Okay.
Yeah. I think far more than likes, shares, or even comments. It's people personally messaging you something that they're not even comfortable putting in a public comment, which is that this made me feel a certain way, or this is something I really resonated with, or this incident that you opened with, or some anecdote that you've put in the story. Because I think that's the purest form of feedback you can get. I feel comments, maybe sometimes people will just leave, a well done because everyone is putting a well done, or they'll put a well written because everyone is praising that. I'm not saying I take comments that lightly. I do think if someone is taking the time and effort to write a couple of sentences about my few sentences, then it's a good measure of how my writing made them feel. But DMs are entirely pure because this person is not even trying to perform appreciation or perform hate or any of those things. This is genuinely what they feel.
It's a one-to-one conversation they're trying to have.
And it takes time because they're going to your profile, they're hitting the DM, they're writing, hi Ria, we met once, XYZ, I just read your essay, and there's like a full paragraph they are writing that I think is the most, or if people follow you, because then it's like my one writing was so good, you now want to read everything I will ever write. I think those deeper connections are what I genuinely value. People will WhatsApp you sometimes. Someone you haven't spoken to for a very long time is like, oh, I just read what you put out. I think those are great measures of success because these are people taking time out of a very busy life and a very busy internet thing also, like they could have just liked and scrolled past, but leaving a comment or more than that, giving a DM is like effort. So that for me is the best thing. Your editor saying that you've done a very good job, I hope you write more for us in the future, or just immediately starting a discussion, okay, do you have any other ideas? I think that's a great measure of success. Yeah, like because this is someone who is paying you also and who has no obligation to make you feel any kind of way. They have done their job, I have done my job. The transaction could just end there. But going out of their way then to say, oh, this was great, or like, you could have done this, or editing with you, I love how you're so prompt with your edits. Like, I think any of those things are great measures of success. I would say like now people will reshare and they want their network to also read your work. People will retweet, add a little anecdote of that their own. I would put that in the same category as the DM also, because now this person wants other people to read what you've written also. That I think is quite good.
We had a social media influencer on our podcast.
Okay.
And I asked her a similar question, but it was about content, not about your essays. So she said, like, I asked her that what kind of statistics are you looking at? And she said, I'm looking at the saves and the bookmarks as well. Yeah. So is that also something that you look at?
I think I feel like for writing, saves and bookmarks are also sometimes I'll come back and read this later.
I'll continue this.
So I don't know how much that is. In that moment, someone sitting and reading the whole thing is what I actually value. So for me, that then comes from the DM or the comment or the reshare. Saves and bookmarks are good because I mean it's a good engagement metric to have also. Yeah,
you know that people are reading.
So that way it's nice. Once in a while, someone will offer you a job or something. Yeah, that will happen very rarely.
That is high praise.
Yeah, that is the highest form of praise. That's like, it has happened to me like twice now in my career. Once because of a Twitter thread, once because of an essay.
Nice.
Yeah, then it's that. अब उसके beyond तो मैं ही क्या ही बोलूँ, मतलब that is the ultimate thing.
Okay, so you've had a certain recent pivot, not a pivot, but say an inclusion in your writing of tech.
Yeah.
So when you're writing about, let's say now the hot topic is artificial intelligence for the last few years, how are you using that in your process?
AI specifically or in general the tech that I could?
Let's talk about AI first.
Okay. But I do want to also talk about like in general like why this shift. I wouldn't even call it a shift towards tech.
It's a natural inclusion.
I feel like in any internet-y or tech sort of space, there's like three major stakeholders. One is where the money is coming from. So investors, VC, all of that. I think that's a certain kind of analysis that business journalists do very well. The second thing is the technological frameworks the thing is built on. You have specialized tech journalists for that as well. The third part is the human aspect of it. Like what the users of this technology are thinking, feeling. I feel my work was anyway always in that domain because I was writing about internet culture. I just realized now it's a little important to touch upon the other two aspects as well. I would not say I've become a tech writer or I'm writing too much. It's just necessary now to talk about those things because they're too interlinked with each other. I've also, in the past year and a half that I've been working at Stumble, we work directly with a few companies as well in terms of providing culture insights and all of those things. So that work requires us to be tapped into some of these technological aspects also to talk about genuine tech updates that have come in, newer, some AI update that has come in, etc. So, zarurat bhi hai of the kind of work that I'm doing to read up more on that. I don't use AI for my writing at all. And I will say this in a very egotistical manner. I think I write much better than like any AI writing tool out there. I also spent far too much time developing my voice to now have a machine replicate it for me. To me, it also feels like a very outcome-tied process to be using AI to write. Because are you a writer because you have a paragraph at the end of the day to your name, or are you a writer because you do writing? And I feel like I'm a writer because I do writing, because as we spoke before, at the end of the day, it's helping me learn more about myself and the world around me. I'm sure I could write much faster if I had AI help and, I could have it do some of that work for me. But then I am not reaping the multiple additional benefits that I get out of being a writer in the first place. And most people, I think today who are writers didn't become writers so that we can produce words. We became writers because we enjoy the process. And आप process ही outsource कर दो, फिर बचा क्या आपके लिए? So that is there. two, of course, on a more basic level, AI is horrible with factual accuracy. So if you're trying to write anything, even touching upon research, touching upon current events, you can't do that because they're not good with that. I'm sure they'll get better over time. There are more real-time AI networks coming out, but we are not there yet.
But what about, say, checking grammar, proofreading?
हाँ मतलब वैसे grammar ठीक है. I have a Grammarly extension if you count that as AI. हाँ, maybe that is there. And I studied English. My grammar is fine. I don't have. Most editors of mine have also told me that I submit very clean copy. So I'm quite okay in terms of my grammar. I have AI do a lot of logistical things for me. So invoicing. If I'm doing, from time to time, I also freelance in marketing work. That I am fully co-working with AI. So if I have to come up with 10 taglines or something, or if I wanted to expand a brief or to make a brief shorter, or वो सब मैं AI से करा दूंगी, because marketing is actually outcomes tied. If there's something I enjoy doing, वो फिर मैं क्यों ही किसी tool से कराऊँ? हाँ.
Fair. There's something I wanted to touch base with you on, which is dreams and walks.
Dreams and walks.
I think somewhere you mentioned that some of these thoughts may have come to you in dreams.
Yeah.
Right. And also you use a lot of walks to clear your head.
Yeah.
So what do they do to you?
Walking is a relaxation mechanism. I have always enjoyed exercise, and I will say that for like writers or any other creative profession, people expect our practices to be very creatively tied. That what makes you a better writer, it's writing 500 words in the morning, or like reading more, or all of those things. I feel like walking also makes me a better writer because I'm doing a very mindless thing, and like I walk in the area around my house. There's parks here, so I don't have to think about where I'm going, so I can think about other things. That is also that time where a lot of our first two processes, which is ideas and inspiration, are happening. Because मैंने headphones लगाए हैं, कोई मुझसे बात नहीं कर रहा. I am walking the same area I've walked for 20 years, so there is nothing new to see.
Mindlessly you are walking around.
I don't even have to think about where I'm turning.
Right.
So now I can single-handedly think about the writing that I'm doing, any essay that is coming out, and I feel like I have to think more about my argumentation. That is
so
stuff
in this moment you're consciously spending time thinking about the topic at hand or the work at hand, or you're just mindless also in the sense that you're letting the subconscious do the calculation?
हाँ, I think it's that. Because walk करने में daily जाती हूँ. Even if I'm writing an essay, even if I'm not writing an essay. If I'm not writing anything at that point of time, तो मैं ऐਵੇਂ ही सोच रही होती हूँ. उसमें भी कभी-कभी you get an idea from somewhere. You're making those mental connections. Something you're thinking of for some reason. Sometimes you think about something else also. You had a fight with someone. All of that is also going on in your head. If I'm writing, then the walks become like a relaxation thing where I know my mind will get time to wander and I'll be able to figure something out. So if I've been sitting at my laptop too long trying to write and now I'm stuck, I'm like, okay, let me go for a walk. Something will probably come to me. I've trusted my walks that much. The dreams thing is one. Literal dreams, I'd say that is less of that क्योंकि मुझे ऐसे अपने सपने याद नहीं रहते. When I wake up, I know I've had some dream. हाँ, but quite often I don't remember. You often wake up with a lingering feeling, like horror or excitement or something. So I know I had some dream. Very rarely do I remember the actual thoughts or like the consensus of whatever happened in my dream. I daydream very frequently, which is that I'm just in the car looking out, in the metro looking around, something happens, you're like, agar ye aise na hota, aise hota. That is where a lot of my ideas come to me. I think that letting your mind roam free instead of trying to force itself into this is the one thing I have to produce at the end of this daydream. Or even when I go for the walk, it's not कि मेरे को इस argument के end तक पहुंचना. It is मुझे कुछ argument कहीं से चाहिए. So if I think more, just think about different things, something will come to me. So it's free thinking. I don't know. There are many ways. If you read Rick Rubin, he calls it, I think, free something.
In his book.
Free association. Yeah, all of those things that people like to term it as. Whatever you want to call it. This, like, just sit idle doing nothing. And then what comes to you is introspection, anything. That is where a lot of my ideas come.
When you are researching, when you're consciously researching, I wanted to take the example of this article you wrote. I think I've written down the name. The name of the article was that will you break up if your partner
doesn't post you on
Instagram?
Yeah.
That piece had so many takes. from so many varied people.
Yeah.
I was thinking that how did she manage to take so many inputs and make sense of them? So when you are doing, like, I want to talk to you about research management. Like when you have so many inputs from so many people, how are you making sense of it and organizing that?
I think you have to be very conscious about what the purpose of your piece is. When I'm writing an op-ed, I know this is my opinion. So मुझे factual research करनी है to make sure my opinions are fact backed. But I don't need to talk to anyone else कि आपका perspective क्या है, because the point of an op-ed is my perspective.
It's your opinion.
Yeah. So I know the amount of research this will take. The second I want to do a behavior piece, or I want to do a human interest sort of story, which is this article, for example. Another one that I did that was about what example should I give? I did one about group chats for Mint Lounge. So it's about, how we are all gravitating towards group chats.
This was during the pandemic.
2022 this
I
was.
remember, yes.
When you're doing an idea like this, your perspective is not the only important perspective, because there are people who will feel very strongly about this in a contrarian perspective to you. And those opinions are just as important as yours. Just because you are the one writing your story doesn't mean कि सिर्फ आप अपने ही support वाला research highlight करो या अपने ही support वाले anecdotes highlight करो. Thankfully, I'm at a point where I have an audience on Instagram and Twitter. So I just put out a post saying I am writing about XYZ. If you've experienced this, or if you've spoken to someone, this essay, for example, will you break up with your partner? I think I put up a post saying if you and your partner are differing in your levels of social media use and that impacts your relationship in any way, I would want to talk to you. So without giving too much away and without asking like a leading question, you get people to talk to you, give you their perspectives. I knew, for example, in this piece, speaking to an influencer would be so important, because that's a level of social media use where their job is to put their lives on social media.
Use of
And their partner will never be able to match that. How does that change the relationship?
Right.
How does it change the relationship when one partner isn't on social media at all? How about when your partner used to post their ex a lot, now they're off social media, so now they're not posting you? How does that make you feel? Things like this, when you're talking about human behavior, it's important to voice all of these facets, or at least as many of them as possible. Somewhere you have to draw the line also. This essay, I think, went on to 1600, 1700 words. That point, my editor was like, okay, bus. This is far too much. It's not even about paying. It's like no one will read as long a piece as this. So you try to include as many of them as possible. You allot a certain point of time. I also know if I wrote an essay, for example, on the way music production is changing because of the way reels are being made.
So companies are asking them for a certain hook.
The shorter music,
Yes.
the hook comes early in Bollywood songs.
Yes.
I knew I would have to speak to music composers, singers, producers. These are not people who will reply to you in 5 minutes. These are people who might take a week to get back to you. That's something also you have to manage in terms of time management, telling your editor that my deadline has to at least be 2 weeks because I can't do it in itna zyada time. That article I wrote in 2 days. So that were 2 all-nighters, like back to back 72 hours, like no sleeping. I had a full-time job at that point of time. I took chutti one day because that was a timely piece tied to the release of Kesaria. I think the second you know that your deadline is a crunch deadline, your time management has to entirely change. You have to send mass mails, you have to do all of that. It's you knowing how quickly you can write, because research ek jagah hai, how much time do you take for the actual writing itself, or can you do it simultaneously? You have to know that. You have to know if you get extremely disparate anecdotes from people, will you be able to link them together in a story? I think that's one thing I'm okay with. Yeah. I think contrarian points of views are a very natural state of human existence. We always live, we are a society, we live in a society, and we have so many different takes, and yet we're able to coexist because end of the day, all we're looking for is happiness in our individual lives. We are also trying not to harm other people. It's not like I'm contrarian on purpose. It just happens to be my method of happiness being different from yours. I think if at the end of the day, you're able to find one common thread linking all of those different anecdotes together,
which is wanting happiness.
Exactly. Or which can be that this breakup wala story, you just want to feel loved by your partner.
Right.
Howsoever it happens is different. It can be through social media, that can be your love language. It can be off social media also. You find that one common thread linking all of those things. I think I'm good at that. Which is why I know whatever research anecdotally I do, I will be able to synthesize it into a good story. It will take me maybe half a day, one day.
It takes a certain level of compassion or empathy maybe for you to see the good good in all sides.
Yeah, this is specific for my writing, like human
of
interest.
course. Huh.
I'm sure, like, if there's a tech journalist who's doing a story where they're getting multiple points of input, like one person is saying ye D aisa hua, another person is saying ye D aisa hua, you have to become very good at calling out bullshit and figuring out which fact is the correct fact. My thing is I have to figure out how all of these multiple human behaviors can coexist in the same domain. You develop that muscle for yourself. That's when you understand how to do research management. That's how you understand when to stop doing research and getting to the writing. That's also how you figure out when you have enough. My writing is a very healthy balance of my opinions, my perspectives, and other people's opinions and perspectives, and numerical statistical data. So you figure out what balance works best for a certain story. So in some places, you need more numerical backing for a certain kind of story. If for example AI is a part of that story, etc. Like I need to put in those numbers कि इतने लोग use करते हैं AI, इतने investment जा रही है into AI. If I'm doing something around social media, research is not overly important. It's more about the user behavior on it. This is all, I think, part of figuring out your method of writing, part of figuring out the themes that attract you and what specialized expertise those themes require for you to have. I think once you figure that out, it doesn't even seem to be that difficult now. You called it research management. I was like, ये तो कुछ fancy terminology. Like for me, it's
no. I'm talking about making sense of these things. Right?
Yeah.
Actually, unrelated to this, now I wanted to ask you: do you write differently with pen and paper as compared to?
No.
You're very like.
Yeah. I use pen and paper to make flow charts because sometimes I'm like, okay, this thought will lead to this thought, and you have to sometimes draw an outline, which for me happens with pen and paper because it's a messy exercise of like arrows going here and there.
Like a dad's
circles.
Whiteboard.
It's a proper whiteboard exercise. Some stories are straightforward in their narrative. So you don't even need an outline. You've sent a pitch to an editor. So you've told them कि मेरी story ऐसे start होगी and this is what I want to prove at the end of it. That's your outline.
So you just need to give them the outline at that time.
In a pitch?
At the time of pitching, you just need the outline.
You need to tell them, I think people are interested in this particular theme these days. I can write about that because I've done this kind of writing before, or, I can write about internet culture because I'm part of internet culture. Anything, like whatever makes you the best writer for that story, and you tell them what the story will accomplish, which is necessarily the outline.
Fair. Okay, now I just wanted to close out this conversation, although there are a lot of other things, but let's close this.
I'm having too much fun also.
So I wanted to close out on, of course, the creme de la creme, which is your book. So I know you'll not be able to talk a lot about it. Yeah. But there's a very interesting thing, and again, I can cut this out if you want. But you said that the process of writing the book is, I think you rehashed Nietzsche a little bit. Okay. Where you said that it neither killed me nor made me stronger. It did a third
secret third thing. Yeah.
It's a third thing.
This is also a meme these days.
Okay. So I'm too old for that. So what is that third thing? I think trying not to shit on the process of writing a book. It is a very effort-taking, naturally, of course, like you're trying to write a book of all things. It takes a lot out of you in terms of actual physical stamina, effort. Your physical brain gets tired because of the amount of information it has to handle, all of these things. That's where it neither killed me comes from. Like it made its attempts. It is currently in the attempt of trying to kill me. You're getting the benefits also of, one, the actual prospect of writing the book, two, figuring yourself out, being able to make sense of all these different things different thoughts that were in your head. That is the making stronger part. I think the secret third thing is some space of being, I mean, this is too romanticized a notion, but in some way it's being rid of thoughts that were your own for so long, especially when you're writing non-fiction. This is stuff that has plagued me for a very long time. Like, these are stories that I have carried within myself for years. And my book is about me writing about growing up on and with and because of the internet. So life experiences that are both good, that are also traumatic, that are also defining, some entirely irrelevant ones. Talking about all of those things it gives you relief and it gives you release. So for me, it's like taking a deep breath and holding it for a very long time and finally letting all of it out. That's how I feel. Is it like letting go of the baggage that you've been carrying? And I think you have to face the fact that this is now for other people who will also be dissecting the things that you went through and what you felt about your experiences. So it's
about letting it out and handing it over to other people. So it's cutting up pieces of yourself and giving them out. कि अभी ये तुम्हारे, अब तुम करो जो तुम्हें करना है. You know, like very biblical, but you give them bread saying this is my body and like this is my blood. This is yours now.
Are you scared of how honest you've been? Is it scary to put yourself out there?
100%. I have more recently also been at a place in the internet where people have been very honest to me about the fact that they don't think I'm a good writer, or you know, if they think that my themes are unrelatable to them or I'm missing out. So to know that they might not like it, but to also know that you've been truthful to yourself. So the people who do like it genuinely like the most authentic version of you.
Is the negative criticism, could it possibly come in the way of your truthfulness? That you will probably be...
I'm a spiteful person. It's making me more honest.
You're
I'm
a
like,
hater.
you think this is bad? Like the book will be
Let
worse.
me show you.
Yeah. You have not seen how bad it gets.
Okay.
So I'm excited about it, overwhelmingly excited about it. And it's a scary but relief-giving process.
Is it still a collection of
Essays? Yeah.
But there will be a through line.
The internet.
The internet will be the through line. And of course your...
Yeah. My internet.
Right. But you described it somewhere as you trying to understand the experience of being human in today's world.
I think that's on my website.
It's a pretty broad concept.
I think that's what all writing is also about. That's a very non-statement to me. Everything is about being human in today's world.
Exactly.
I just I try to get as close to it as possible. And my medium of doing that is pop culture and the internet. And I specifically talk about younger people because these are the people who are becoming human. अब जो old लोग हैं उनके बारे में कुछ लिख नहीं सकती. It's what fascinates me at the end of the day. Like people, why we are doing what we are doing, why we are behaving a certain kind of way. And I like people. I think that's also part of being the extrovert. Like overwhelmingly, I find something I like in most people I encounter. So then it's about finding those connections. Like why do we share these patterns of behavior? Why are we being human in the same way? This sounds like a Salman Khan ad.
Yes.
But it's about that. It's my core fascination.
What is your expectation? What are you hoping to achieve with this book? For yourself and for your readers?
I think it's an exercise in writing much longer form than I have ever written before. I realized that I have trained myself to write either extremely short things for like a tweet sort of thing, or my essay length is 1500 to maybe 2000 words. Yeah. I'm writing like 10,000 word essays now, and many of them.
Just one essay, yeah.
So the entire a manuscript is 80,000 plus words.
Amazing.
So it's a physical and a writerly exercise in developing that skill as well. It's exciting because no one is telling me कि बहुत लंबा हो रहा है. Like it's me telling myself this is not long enough. Like write more. So the freedom to delve as deeply into anything is possible.
And
like
your rabbit holes and digressions.
I just was writing an essay where my introduction is about something completely ancillary to the point of the essay, and it's already a 1,000 word introduction, which is an essay that I could have published in and of itself, because 1,000 words is also a length that you publish online. So to have that freedom is so exciting because I can go on and on for as long as I want.
Yeah.
That is great. My expectation is that people will give it the grace of doing all of these rabbit holes and doing all of these digressions and still having a heart to it. I hope they spend time with it, reading it, and take away what they want. I feel like non-fiction is also often about what you make of it. This is not a self-help book, but if there are some coping mechanisms that I do describe that people think can help them, I would love for that to help them as well. If this is not like a career guidance book, but I do touch upon how the internet helped my career. So if that is something people take away, that is that.
Well and good.
I'm trying to be funny, as most of my writing is. So if it gives people a good laugh, like that is also fine. Whatever. I just hope they take away something and they read it cover to cover and they buy it and not pirate it so that I get my royalties. That's my expectation.
And what about yourself? For yourself?
I need to be happy with it. I think your first book has so much pressure from the world on it, but also from you yourself, because you're like, this is, especially non-fiction about your life, like this is what my life has led me to. It needs to feel good, at least for myself. I think that's my expectation. I hope I'm happy with the end product. I think I will be. Like, I'm quite excited about what I've written till now. It's not a kind of book that I think has come out of India like in recently and at this age. I'm so scared, but as long as it meets my standard, I know that's one happy reader, that's me, because I will have fun writing and reading and taking something away from it. I need to be happy for audience, then after that needs to also be happy.
Well, thank you so much, Ria, for giving me this time, and I am also very excited to read your book now. And if there is, before we close out, if there is any feedback or any criticism that you have for me, please give it to me right now. I'll do everything I can to make things right.
I love your research. I love how you've gone into so much depth, especially about someone who's on the internet. Information about me is not in one place. It's multiple platforms you have traversed, trawled through to find all the things that you have. So kudos to you. I feel so valued that you've given me this time as well. I had so much fun. You've given me time to talk, space to talk. I have become the horse of your podcast today. So it's been quite nice.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you learned something new from this episode of the Horsemouth podcast, do rate and review us on Spotify, Instagram, X, or wherever people engage with you the most.